Morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to put my BlackBerry away and come here and be able to speak to you and be present with you for 2 or 3 hours every year. It's a great relationship we've got, and I personally count it as one of the highlights of my year. And I've been in this job now 3 years this spring, and I still think that I won the lottery. And part of it is because of being able to work with you and your membership. This annual event is a welcome opportunity to review shared achievements and set goals for the future for both our organizations. As the Minister said in his video, our ministry places great value on your contributions. I'd like to reinforce that point. We have sustained partnerships over many years and on a variety of initiatives, and we've delivered real progress that benefits all Ontarians. You are important advocates for the sustainable use of Ontario's natural heritage. You are hardworking volunteers who put values into action. Your organization, like M&R, operates across the entire province. So thank you for helping to conserve and protect the province's biodiversity while benefiting anglers, hunters, and our broader community. I also would like to acknowledge members of the Fish and Wildlife Heritage Commission who are here today, and thank you for providing your valuable advice on promoting and funding hunting and fishing programs in the province. We take your advice and your wisdom very seriously. This morning, I'd like to provide an update on a wide range of work being done by the ministry. Then I'd be happy to take your questions, and I will have a full panel of able advisors who will actually do the heavy lifting on those questions. I'd like to start today with a significant recent announcement made by our Minister, David Orazietti. Angelo was at Queen's Park 2 weeks ago when Minister Orazietti announced that he would introduce the Invasive Species Act in the legislature. Invasive species like Asian carp and zebra mussels pose a serious threat to our economy and to our environment. The proposed Invasive Species Act would provide a strong legislative framework to better prevent, detect, and rapidly respond to and eradicate invasive species. It would help by providing the powers to intervene earlier so small problems don't lead to significant environmental and economic costs for Ontarians. The proposed act would give Ontario the tools we need to ban certain activities. For example, we could ban the possession and sale of aquarium plants like hydrilla, one of the world's most invasive aquatic weeds. It would also enable rapid response actions to address urgent threats, such as confiscating a shipment of wood known to be infected with an invasive forest pest. If the Act is passed, Ontario will be the first jurisdiction in Canada with standalone invasive species legislation. This legislation is a signal of how seriously the government takes the threat of invasive species to our economy and to our biodiversity. The proposed legislation has been posted for comment on the Environmental Registry. We hope to hear from you and other stakeholders during the commenting period. Ontario works with many parties to combat invasive species, and no partnership is more important than the one we have with the OFAH. In fact, the proposed legislation would allow us to expand the use of strategic partnerships, such as our agreement with your federation, on the Invasive Species Awareness Program. That program plays a vital role in raising awareness and engaging the public, because managing invasive species is everyone's responsibility, and that's one of the things we're going to be emphasizing in a public awareness campaign about the individual accountability that's required to help make this effective. Working together, the OFAH and the Ministry has developed a new online tool for tracking invasive species. It's called the Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System, and you can learn more about it at the Invading Species Awareness Program booth that we have set up outside. I will note, however, that we continue to increase our surveillance and enforcement efforts. Our enforcement officers, working with the Canadian Border Services, have intercepted more than 40,000 pounds of Asian carp and laid charges resulting in nearly $250,000 in fines. We know Asian carp are at our doorstep. With continued surveillance and enforcement, and with the tools in the proposed Invasive Species Act, we are as ready as we can be to manage this threat with your help. Now I'd like to turn to the Ministry's transformation plan, which I spoke about at length during last year's conference, and give you an update on the considerable progress that we've made since then. The transformation means keeping and building on many of the things that make us a strong ministry, one that is trusted to manage and protect our province's natural resources. You're probably aware of an internal reorganization of our science and field office functions last summer. That restructuring is almost entirely complete, though we're still hiring for several positions. I can assure you that we are maintaining staffing levels in science and research at approximately the same level they were before the alignment. There's been virtually no job loss on the science position. M&R has always relied on the best available science to manage our natural resources, and that will not change with this realignment. With respect to our field office structure, we still have our 3 regional offices and 25 district offices, as well as 10 field offices. And once hiring for the new organizational model is complete, we will have roughly the same number of field staff that we had in 2012 before we started the transformation. Our district offices will continue to be responsible for implementing many of our programs and working with local stakeholders. If you've been working with staff in these offices, you'll find that they will continue to be available to discuss resource management issues with you. As we communicated to our staff some time ago, one of the remaining changes will be the realignment of our policy division to make sure it remains responsive to emerging policy challenges, and that will be taking place over the next year. One of the most significant changes we're making under transformation is to modernize and streamline our approach to certain licenses, permits, and authorizations. Our goal is to reduce the burden on individuals, businesses, and government while protecting natural resources. So, for example, we saw the opportunity to make changes that would have little or no impact on natural resources, but would cut down on paperwork for hunters and anglers. So far, M&R has modernized more than 50 approvals processes. So, and to put that into perspective, we administer 140 different types of approvals, aside from hunting and fishing licenses. So this is a significant reduction. When I spoke to you last year, we were just beginning to consult on some of these processes, and I'm pleased to say that those I told you about under the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act are now in place. In addition to the changes that I highlighted last year, the Ministry has also launched an online approach to registration and approval for some activities related to wildlife, species at risk, and public lands. As we're modernizing permits and other authorizations, we're also continuing to refine our online hunting and fishing licensing system. Over the next few months, M&R will continue to make enhancements to the system to make it easier to navigate, make purchases, enter draws, and view results. We're also adding to the capability to email out transaction details back to you. Another element of our plan has been modernizing our stewardship programs. As part of that work, M&R announced 2 new programs at last year's OFAH conference: the Land Stewardship and Habitat Restoration Program and the Community Hatchery Program. In its first year, the Land Stewardship and Habitat Restoration Program funded 24 projects that supported the restoration, rehabilitation, and enhancement of fish and wildlife habitat in Ontario. Applications for the second year of the program closed in January, and we will be announcing the list of successful projects later this spring. The other program we announced last year, the Community Hatchery Program, is our newest partnership with your organization. Through a 3-year agreement with the Federation, M&R provides $250,000 per year to support community and M&R fisheries management goals and objectives. This approach to a community hatchery program will continue to improve opportunities for networking, knowledge transfer, and technical learning. 41 community hatcheries received funding in 2013, and a coordinator was hired for the program who is dedicated to strengthening the support to community fish hatcheries. One of the benefits of the work we're doing to modernize approvals relates to community hatcheries. They can now apply for their aquaculture, stocking, and egg collection licenses at one time, with fewer forms to fill out. We look forward to the further growth and development of this program, and I'm confident we'll see a positive impact on the management of our fisheries resources. Staying on the subject of hunting, I'm pleased to report very good news about the Hunter Education Program. It's seen a 12 record years of growth in enrollment with more than 25,000 students last year. That's a significant positive trend. That represents an almost 19% increase over the previous year. The Wild Turkey Hunter Education Program also saw a record uptake with 11,500 students through both in-person seminars and the purchase of the take-home DVD. This is up from about 9,000 students the previous year. Providing new hunters in Ontario with the foundation to hunt responsibly is an accomplishment that we can all be proud of. Together, we need to ensure that these programs reach even more people, that they continue to be responsive to all the ways people learn, and that they reflect Ontario's diversity and bring new people into the hunting and fishing community. Some unfortunate hunting incidents in the news last fall, you'll recall, serve as a reminder to all hunters, young and seasoned, to always have safety foremost in mind while in the field. I don't have any doubt that you've heard from the Federation or in news reports about M&R's Black Bear pilot project that the Minister alluded to as well. And I'll give you an update on that. As you know, Ontario is home to a healthy and sustainable bear population. There has been, however, growing concern among some northern Ontario municipalities regarding human-bear conflicts and the threat to safety they present. M&R is proposing a pilot project in specific northern municipalities that would see a limited early hunting season. For the pilot, we chose wildlife management units closest to the communities with high reported levels of nuisance bear activity. Municipal councils in the pilot regions were asked to demonstrate their support for the 2-year pilot by passing a council resolution. At this point, we are reviewing the comments we've received from all the municipalities and through a posting on the Environmental Registry. I know there's a great deal of interest in this pilot among OFAH members, and should we move forward with it, we will monitor and evaluate its success to assess the merits of an early hunt in helping to reduce human-bear conflicts. Still on the subject of hunting, we're seeing a growing number of municipalities ask to be added to the list of locations where the Sunday gun hunt is allowed. In 2013, 3 municipalities in southern Ontario were added to the list: the townships of Malahide near Elmer, Enniskillen near Petrolia, and Duro-Dummer near Peterborough. We have heard from 4 more municipalities wishing to have Sunday gun hunting starting April the 1st of this year. We hope to have an announcement about the townships of Ashfidel-Norwood, Muskoka Lakes, the Archipelago, and Beckwith in the very near future. The Ministry will continue to act on municipal requests for Sunday gun hunting, and we appreciate your organization's support on this. You may be aware that Ontario introduced a youth trapping program for the fall 2013 season, so last fall. This program is designed to promote youth involvement in commercial trapping activities, provide recreational benefits for youth, and help families pass on traditions to the next generation. Under the direct supervision of an adult mentor, young people aged 12 to 15 who have successfully completed training can get a license that allows them to set traps and handle and sell pelts. Around 20 young people have already been licensed to trap, and many more are taking the training for this season. There's 2 species where the OFAH plays a very important role in restoring healthy wildlife populations, and that's wild turkey and elk. Ontario's wild turkey population continues to do well and expand its range into new areas. I live in Kingston, or just east of Kingston, and I'm seeing more and more of them all the time on the farmland around where I live. As a result, we are currently consulting to add new wildlife management units for spring and fall wild turkey hunting. The proposed units are 42, 47, 49, and 50 for spring, and 59 for the fall. The consultation period closes March 24th, and we welcome your comments through the Environmental Registry. If the proposal is passed, these seasons will be in place later this year. The restoration of elk is a significant achievement for Ontario's biodiversity. The elk hunt, Ontario's newest big game hunting opportunity, has clearly demonstrated how much we can achieve with committed partners. The 3rd successful elk hunt was held in Bancroft area last September. The annual elk survey was completed by M&R staff, and I'd like to thank the OFAH and the Quinte Elk Restoration Group for their support on this. The data are being analyzed, and results should be available later this month. With respect to other elk populations in the province, the Lake Huron North Shore herd has been increasing steadily since 2001. However, the Ministry is concerned that the herd may not have yet reached a sustainable hunt level, so that's one of the things we're watching diligently. We will be engaging in the local community in discussions on this point over the next year. I want to talk about moose now as well. M&R has had a long and successful partnership with you in managing the province's moose population. Monitoring it is vital to ensuring the sustainability of our moose populations, and this year saw very good winter conditions for completing aerial surveys. A total of 25 surveys were flown in the northwest, the northeast, and the southern region. Ontario's moose population continues to support hunting opportunities each year. Populations are stable to increasing in most areas of southern Ontario. Thanks to the fact that we were successful in doing more surveys this year than in an average year, we have information for these WMUs on which to base management decisions, and we will be examining the results of the surveys and will consider next steps with respect to moose tag allocations and harvest management strategies. We'll be working with you and other partners for continued input on the moose management program in the province. So I've covered a lot of ground about hunting. Now I'll switch to fisheries and angling. First, I want to touch on one subject that relates to both, our annual regulation summaries. I know that you rely on the Recreational Fishing Regulation Summary and the Hunting Regulation Summary to plan your angling and hunting each year. These are available online and in printed form. As a cost-saving measure, the Ministry reduced the print quantities in 2013 for both of these publications. This helped reduce pressures on the Fish and Wildlife Special Purpose Account. It also reflected the government's direction to provide more services online. Hunters and anglers expressed some concern about the reduction, and as a result, we did a second print for both summaries. In 2014, we're printing the same quantities of both summaries as we did in 2013. As in previous years, they will be available through Service Ontario, private license issuers, and our M&R offices. On the topic of fishing, I'd like to talk about Atlantic salmon and the restoration work we do. We value the lead role the OFAH plays in the Atlantic salmon restoration program. Last May, the Minister officially reopened the Normandale Fish Culture Facility, now the home for Atlantic salmon culture. Many of our partners were on hand to celebrate this significant achievement and investment. The reopening highlights the Ministry's continuing commitment to fish culture as a key fisheries management tool. It's encouraging to see the broader science community working together to help understand and overcome the challenges to restoration. This past fall, I went hip deep in the new weir at Duffins Creek. It's funded by the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission and operated by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority in partnership with M&R. The weir is helping us sample and learn about returning fish and to monitor sea lamprey wounding rates on trout and salmon. We'll continue to seek advice from the science community to guide the restoration efforts, and there will continue to be challenges ahead, but we remain committed to the goals of the program and to the work with our partners. I know many of you are actively involved in the Atlantic Salmon Restoration Program. Another way anglers get involved is through Fisheries Management Zone Advisory Councils. These councils provide a tremendous venue for advice and insight. Many of you go that extra mile and volunteer your time to make these councils successful. So far, 13 councils are working with the Ministry to develop fisheries management plans and strategies for their zones. As these councils complete the planning process, new councils will be started. Through the coordinated efforts of these councils, we were able to provide new angling opportunities and economic benefits across the province. In 2013, we implemented regulations stemming from planning processes in fisheries management zones 4 and 5 in the northwest and zone 10 in the northeast. In zone 4, we increased the protection of lake trout populations. In zone 5, we were implementing a number of changes to northern pike, bass, and black crappie regulations. Zone 10 will see bass season opening the third Saturday in June, providing an additional week of angling in the part of the zone where bass are native. And in the northern portion of Zone 10, smallmouth bass seasons are now open all year round. In 2014, we anticipate bringing draft plans forward for public insight in Zones 11, 12, and 18 in central and eastern Ontario. Provincially, we continue to work on the development of a draft fish strategy for Ontario to guide all fisheries management in the province. The previous strategic plan was released in 1992, so it's time for a new one. The new strategy will account for the environmental, social, and economic changes that have taken place since '92. It will set provincial goals and objectives for fisheries and the systems that support them. As part of this effort, the Ministry shared an earlier draft with the Federation. We met with your Fishery Committee, and we held a stakeholders workshop on late February this year. The draft strategy has been posted on the Environmental Registry for a 120-day public review period, which ends on May 21st. The Ministry is continuing to meet with stakeholders and Aboriginal groups to get their input during the general public review period. Bait is an important commercial and recreational resource that contributes to Ontario's fishery and the economy. As many of you know, there are ecological concerns associated with using and moving bait fish and leeches. The movement of bait can spread disease and invasive species, both of which threaten Ontario's biodiversity and economy. We need to address these concerns while maintaining a viable bait industry. With that goal in mind, last spring we initiated a full review of our bait policy with input from the Bait Fish Review Advisory Group, including representation from the OFAH. We want to take a more active approach to the threats of invasive species and disease, as demonstrated in our legislative proposal. At the same time, we would like to simplify how bait is managed in Ontario and provide greater certainty for businesses in the industry. We'll be seeking input from key stakeholders in the public throughout this review, and I encourage you to participate. I know it's a sensitive issue and an important issue for everybody in the room. When I spoke with you last year, the Great Lakes Protection Act had just been reintroduced in the Ontario legislature. It passed second reading last October and is now undergoing a detailed review by a standing committee. If this bill is passed, it would provide new tools to restore and protect the Great Lakes and create a council to identify priorities and recommend actions to address them. One of our key tools in protecting the Great Lakes is the Canada-Ontario Agreement Respecting the Great Lakes Basin, also known as COA. The Ministry of the Environment is leading Ontario's discussions with Environment Canada to finalize a new draft of a new COA agreement for public review and comment. It will address priorities such as fighting aquatic invasives and protecting and restoring Great Lakes species and their habitats. The OFAH has been a partner in a number of COA projects, and we look forward to continuing that work with you in restoring and protecting our Great Lakes. I've been talking about provincial fisheries regulations and policies, but of course the federal government has constitutional jurisdiction over both coastal and inland fisheries, and we are engaged with them on a monthly basis. So let me say a few words about the changes to the Federal Fisheries Act. Fisheries and Oceans Canada has increased engagement with the provinces and territories since the new Fisheries Act prohibitions came into force in November of 2013. Ontario continues to table provincial interests at the national level through the Canadian Council of Fisheries and Aquaculture Ministers. And M&R staff have also been working with our counterparts in Burlington. We meet with stakeholders, including you and your executive, to ensure we table an Ontario perspective at both the national and bilateral level, and I believe that they're listening to us and our concerns. The ministry is also finding new ways to make it easier for anglers to go fishing. Since launching in 2011, our Fish Online tool has been providing information on lakes and fishing for over 13,000 lakes in the province. The response has been it's been great, it's been fantastic, with hundreds of thousands accessing the Fish Online tool. You can use it on your smartphone and you can use it through your computer at home. We've been responding and improving it, the tool, through the feedback and comments that we've been getting from users. This includes information on access points and information on regulations for specific water bodies. An angler's survey will allow you to tell us about your fishing trip, which helps us improve our information. So people are being really diligent in helping us understand how their fishing experience has gone, and allows us to keep the information current. Now we're working on improving accessibility for those with disabilities. This year we're also including the locations of regulated fish sanctuaries, and we will continue updating and improving it as we receive your feedback. In the coming weeks, our website will be moving, the M&R website, will be moving to a central website that unites all the provincial ministries. This is an initiative that has been consolidated within the government, and our website has been built with the user perspective in mind. It's easier to navigate so you can get information quickly. It's accessible on mobile devices. If you want to find out information, you can use a keyword search like fishing or hunting, and it will take you to the relevant information. If you have some of our current pages bookmarked on your computer, you'll have to make some changes as we switch over to ontario.ca, which is the new location. Later this spring, we'll be providing more information on where you can find our content on the website. And please remember that you can keep updated on this project by following us on social media. One of the first things I spoke about with your organization when I joined M&R was the special purpose account, the Fish and Wildlife Special Purpose Account. Over the last year, staff have consulted with stakeholders to develop a draft sustainability strategy for the special purpose account. It struck me at the time that we needed to address the issue of diminishing resources going to that account. We needed to have some sort of a revenue strategy, and I was delighted that the OFAH concurred in that view. It's ultimately about the amount of revenue available to fund fish and wildlife programs and services. You're aware more than anyone else, since the early 90s, fishing participation rates have declined due to demographics, where people are choosing to live, the economy, and the popularity of alternative recreational choices. Sales of licenses, along with the royalties and fines that form our revenues, currently support 2/3 of the science, enforcement, operations, and planning in the ministry. New and increased revenue is required to offset the forecast $28 million decline in revenue over the next 5 years due to those factors that I identified earlier. Having new revenues will help stabilize the SPA and help us to develop a new generation of anglers and hunters. The strategy that we're working on contains 3 goals to sustain revenues in the SPA. It aims to increase revenues by enhancing relationships with existing clients, strengthening marketing and outreach, and diversifying revenue sources. First, we're developing a marketing strategy to focus on increasing fishing and hunting participation in Ontario. This includes expanding the Learn to Fish program, which I'll talk about in a second. Second, we're applying fair cost recovery and value. This means ensuring fees are transparent and based on the cost of delivering a service, the benefits that that service renders, and a fair rate of return to the province for the use of the resources. Third, we're enhancing the efficiency of the Fish and Wildlife program. This includes examining program costs and license sales and identifying potential efficiencies and savings, including partnership opportunities. I'm getting to the end. Before I close and we take questions, I'd like to speak to you about a couple of new initiatives that the Minister alluded to as well. For most of us in the room, hunting and fishing and outdoor recreation have been part of our lives for as long as we can remember. You probably learned to fish and hunt from parents, grandparents, an older sibling. For those in Ontario who didn't grow up fishing, hunting, and spending time in nature, there are obstacles that we wouldn't even notice because we take it for granted. In 2011, we created the Learn to Camp program at select provincial parks for Ontarians who have never spent a night in a tent or roasted a marshmallow, or actually opened a beer at a campsite. That's not in my notes. I'd rather be doing that, though. And last year, based on the success of that program, we launched Learn to Fish at 4 provincial parks. I'm going to get in trouble for having said that, actually, by my staff. This pilot was really well received. It reached more than 2,300 people. I've been to those Learn to Camp initiatives. If you ever get an opportunity to go and see new Ontarians, they're well supported by our commercial partners. Coleman's there, Canadian Tire's there. The stuff that we take for granted, you know, how to get ready for a weekend trip, what to put in the cooler, how to set up a tent. They're enthralled by it, and they go out and they get park memberships, and they get fishing licenses as a result. I'm going way off script here. The program doesn't just give more children the experience of catching their first fish, it helps increase future license sales, which generates revenue for the SPA. So we're expanding the program to 6 provincial parks, and I want to thank the OFAH for providing the fishing equipment through the Tackle Share program that we use in those initiatives. It's really heartening to see, you know, when people who are new to Ontario, depending on where they were raised and what their experience was before they get here, if they're refugees or immigrants, the whole notion of like going into the wilderness and spending time may not appeal to them based on their personal experience. If going into the wilderness was a hardship, or they were forced to do it because of a drought condition or something like that where they come from. So to see them engage with nature and begin to understand the benefit and value of it as we all do, it's tremendously heartening. Related to that is the Children's Outdoor Charter. With so many young people spending so much time in front of screens or doing this, instead of being outdoors, experiencing the joys of nature is something we need to actively encourage. So I've been really boosting this with my colleagues, I'm going off script, sorry, across the country. And we actually had a meeting about this that brought in people who study the activity levels and the level of outdoor engagement young people have. And one of the guys who is a doctor at a hospital and a researcher in Ottawa, He threw up a composite of what a 10-year-old, average 10-year-old looked like in 1981 and what an average 10-year-old looks like in 2011, so 30 years later, one generation. It was really sobering. To cut to the chase, the kid in 2011 is taller, fatter, more sedentary, and is weaker. So grip strength, what's one of the measurements, right? So the things you need to fish, hold a baseball bat, climb a tree, they're like 20%, 30% weaker than the average kid was 30 years ago. So the Children's Outdoor Charter is one of the ways that we're seeking to sort of rectify that nature awareness deficit with young people. The Charter is intended to encourage children to get outdoors, to explore nature, and discover Ontario's biodiversity. There are 12 recommended activities, and every kid who participates in this gets a passport. They include fishing, camping under the stars, swimming in a lake. We're encouraging children, with your help, to take part in outdoor activities, and as we do that, they develop healthier habits. It also helps establish a lifelong appreciation for Ontario's natural heritage and a commitment to conservation, and maybe a new hobby. Rather than having hyper-developed thumbs, they're going to learn to fish. The charter and the initiative was developed by M&R, but it would not have been successful without the work of the Biodiversity Education and Awareness Network and the Fish and Wildlife Heritage Commission, who were fundamental in helping us get it going. The charter complements the hard work that many others, including you, are doing to provide children with experiences in Ontario's outdoors. So let me just say in wrapping up how much we appreciate working with you. We have our differences, but we accommodate them in collaboration and generally in collegial fashion because we have the same interests at heart. We need your advice and guidance as people who represent the eyes and ears on the ground of what we're trying to manage and sustain. And we rely on your partnership as committed resource managers and dedicated educators. Managing our resources in the province and conserving our biodiversity are challenging, but I can't personally say I've had a more rewarding job in my career. And it's got its challenges, but it's great working with you folks on this. So enough of that. I'm happy to take your questions now with the support of my team, who I know are anxious to get up here, and who I will introduce.